Oh, hi there. Um, I was going to bring up North Korea in this video. On the CBC headlines, it's North Korea versus the world. I haven't watched too much of the news today. I mean, I could have watched some of it, but they always drone on about the same things over and over again. They may change a few words up, but it's essentially the same story every time. And for years and years and years, it's the same story. Sanctions, diplomacy, Kim Jong Un reckless testing of missiles, blah, 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 blah. And it all gets very tiresome after a while. You just get sick of hearing it. I know, I realize that they are, a little bit of a problem and they haven't gone away. Um, but there's some things to take into consideration. For one thing, North Korea, um, that's a metaphor for the whole Asian region that does not like the United States, primarily because they're dirt poor and they're just jealous that everything that the West has, in particular the United States, as far as access to new technology, food, um, livable land, everything you can name, good fishing grounds, anything good that you can name about Western powers that these this Asian subcontinent does not like. Um, well, not saying that the North Koreans like the Chinese, because as I said before in another video, that they do not. They probably don't like anybody. But that doesn't mean they don't do business with other people. And the thing is, on the news and hearsay on the internet and all that, they say, well, the United States has dropped, what, 60,000 bombs on 6 different countries this year, and North Korea hasn't done that to any country. None of that matters, okay? I don't need some social justice warrior coming along going, you're an idiot and your opinion counts for nothing. That's what I got to say about people like that. If they have the opportunity to annihilate us, there are people out there that will do it. And you going, no, I have a morally high ground on you. I'm more understanding of things, even though you're just some sort of peon who has a very limited grasp on what's going on in the world. I admit myself, I don't. There's a lot of things I don't understand, but like you hear stuff like North Korea only has the capability to build 4 atomic weapons or nuclear weapons, whatever. For one thing, nobody knows. Only the North Korean higher echelon of government knows exactly how many they have on hand and how many they've sold to places all around the world. A lot of people think, no, it's just the Americans that go into other countries and stuff like that. That's not true at all. You get all sorts of business types going all around the world carrying all kinds of weapons. And LA Cool J from NCIS LA doesn't catch most of them. There are very, very suspicious characters and untrustworthy who are in possession of WMDs. And just not just in Africa and the Middle East, but also parts of Eastern Europe and Russia, uh, like South America. And when they say, the nuclear power community, and they list off like Pakistan, India, China, Russia, you get the picture. That's not accurate at all. There are so many countries that have at least some capability of a nuclear weapon that they do not publicly announce. A lot of people go, well, Japan uh, does not have one, and they were actually they had atomic bombs used on them. Therefore, the Americans would never be able to trust them with one. To an extent, that's true, but the thing is, things change, and the Americans put people in power that they can trust, not because they like them, but because they have ways of really making them regret any bad decision they may make. Um, so conditions and government structure have been changed in places like Japan where they can be trusted to be what they're supposed to be. Um, so therefore, they have nuclear weapons, intercontinental ballistic missiles themselves. Um, but it's not actually just governments that are in possession of nuclear weapons. I mean, arguably, a government can just consist of 10,000 militiamen in Africa. That in itself is a government. And they may have a nuclear weapon. I mean, odds are no small potato, um, tribal leader in Africa has nuclear weapons just because what are they going to do with them? And what do they have to offer to get them? And do they have the brains to even use them? There's so many parts in Africa that still don't know how to build airplanes. So, and it's not that they're stupid in that sense. It's just, there's some things that, people can never learn how to do. Or if they can, it's going to take them generation after generation after generation of trying. Maybe even 1,000 years of them trying to build a modern day airplane for them to be able to do it. And the thing is, you may go, well, they're, like the Chinese in particular have entered Africa in certain areas to build infrastructure, build jobs, this and that and the other, so that they could extract resources, primarily whatever that stuff is that they use to build computer parts and for iPhones and stuff. Well, that's part of it. That's true. But the thing is, they also colonized those places in Africa, and the Western powers either weren't present when the Chinese came about going there, or they didn't really care, or we don't really know. But the thing is, without a shadow of a doubt, the Chinese went there to colonize, and they brought WMDs with them. Everything, from intercontinental ballistic missiles, a substantial army, um, electronic equipment, um, probably every kind of biological weapon you can think of, stuff that can give you, permanent diarrhea, fucking brain parasites, I don't know, you name it. Every doomsday horrible thing that could possibly be invented, they at least brought a sample of to the African continent in their area. So it is disputed territory, and the Americans, in that sense, have every right to invade these the northern parts of Africa, to put a real big foothold back into that continent. Because if they do not, the Chinese will subvertly take over the whole continent. And this is the thing people don't understand. They don't understand conquering and the lust of taking something from other people is still very real in society. And it isn't just the Americans that do that. The media tells you it's just the Americans, or the sidebar media like on Facebook, but really that's mainstream media. But the truth is, there are other parties that most certainly would. There's a substantial East Indian presence in Africa as well. I mean, the British brought them over years ago, but they also, to an extent, have WMDs there as well. They didn't just go there and didn't bring reassurance. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if there's all kinds of skirmishes, battles, fights that we're not aware of, and that's not just with the African tribes that are there. I'm talking like Chinese soldiers and Indian soldiers, or even American soldiers, things like that. I mean, the television, for example, would deny if you asked them that the Spetsnaz and let's say the Navy SEALs from the States ever fought each other. They would deny it, but you know what? I don't think that's true. I think in some form or fashion they fought each other, and that goes the same thing with these powers that are in Africa. is that there are fights and battles that we don't know about. They don't report them here, and you're not allowed to go anywhere near those places. And you go, well, I was just on vacation in Africa. I didn't see or hear anything about that. Well, yeah, you wouldn't. You were on the traveler's tour. You are not allowed to go to those nasty places. They'll always think of a reason for you to not go there. And you'll just be dissuaded from going there. It's impossible to go to those places. Everything's mired in secrecy and all that kind of stuff. That's one possibility, but like as I said, with African tribal leaders, with maybe a militia of maybe 10,000 men, and they're armed with AK-47s and they drive pickup trucks like ISIS. They probably don't have a nuclear weapon, but the thing is, they also don't have anything to offer really for one as far as monetary value goes. That someone like the Chinese couldn't just go, well, we're just taking this resource from you, and what are you going to do about it? That's true, but they may have given them something, just so they can be disruptive, so that they could be somewhat of a problem, kind of give them a candy when you owe them a 3-course meal. They'll take the candy, but yeah, they owe them the 3-course meal. But anyway, I realize that a lot of people, they don't like to look at things from this perspective. Quite often they go to a defensive mode where they go, if it isn't listed, if it's not statistically available, therefore it doesn't exist. Those places I talked about, not just in Africa, but primarily in Africa, Middle East, which is not exactly the same as Africa, although it does dip into Africa, but another thing entirely, Eastern Europe, Eastern Russia, and all those places. Lots of stuff goes on, and it does not get reported. And what information the Western powers have on those particular things, it would not be in the best of national interest to divulge that information to people who are not mentally competent to understand it. People, their beliefs are very, very limited. And we live in a society where people do not have a rudimentary idea of what goes on in the world. I could see that being an advantage for people because, a lot of stuff goes on you don't even want to know about. But it's also a disadvantage because that media on the television can change. And it can change to a tune that really can make you think whatever they want you to think, cause you to panic, cause you, get scared. And don't tell me that governments don't do that. The Japanese just did that with its own populace, saying North Korea fired a missile over them when they didn't do it. I've seen no evidence to prove it. Some scribbles on the internet don't count as evidence. I don't care if it was written by a professor. Don't give a rat's ass. People have been lying about things since the beginning of time, and they're going to continue to do that. And not just in current events, but also in history as well. So history books are not always accurate. Quite often they lie about those too. I think they lied a little bit less in World War II, although there's still many mysteries. But they didn't really have the need to lie about little things here and there. I can make a video about that later. Anyway, the point I wanted to say about this video was North Korea is being used as the poster boy for the start of World War III. There's some vague notion that China may get involved if North Korea is attacked. You hear conflicting stories from here and there. But the reality is DPRK and North Korea is a metaphor for all those dirt poor countries that lack the resources to properly attack the United States. And the reason um, China is, kind of roped into that as well, is because the bulk of Chinese leaders, their populace, is dirt poor. They're the slaves of the world. A little thing that we don't use that word too much around here, unless you're talking about a Confederate flag, and therefore the context gets thrown out of whack. But the thing is, China's not a unified country. I doubt there's a single unified country in the world, especially of any significance. But China's not a unified country by any means. Their political leaders, if you think it's a circus in the United States, it's a way bigger, you know, clusterfuck over there. Everybody hates everybody, and people work in the sense of self-interest. The wealthy Chinese leaders in Hong Kong and Shanghai and places like that, um, they don't care that much for the misery and suffering of other people within the country that they're attached to. They're all about consolidating their own power. And, you know, perhaps they hold a grudge against the United States. In fact, they do, because of the situation that just happened to be. But they're not going to be in that big a hurry to directly start something that could end catastrophically for them and cause them to, lose their power, lose their wealth, and all that sort of stuff. Why do they have to risk their necks when it's, you know, other regions within the Asian subcontinent that have the problem? Um, I guess if you're a bureaucrat, you probably understand this a bit better. But, you know, power's a very funny thing. Uh, you know, Anyway, I'm not saying that those wealthy Chinese businessmen in Hong Kong and wherever can be trusted because the United States maybe helped them along getting rich. In fact, they have to take other things into consideration. So they do, dirty, disgusting things I don't even want to tell you about. In particular against white people because we're the most successful race on the planet. That get kind of swept under the rug, under the radar, nobody knows about. They don't make mainstream news. And that's because you can't start, end of the world type world war, uh, over some dumbasses. It's a shitty thing to say, but it's the truth. And the fact of the matter is, there's different powers that are running around in the world, and most of them are in the shadow, in their secret. You don't know who they are, you never know who they are, and that's how they best can preserve themselves, is the fact that they remain hidden. And, it's very easy to do that when every walk of life, you can basically get the fast forward version of what it is and who they are and what they know. It's easy to deceive people and, lie to them when you know exactly everything they know of any importance, and that they're not likely to think outside the box to understand things from a different perspective. And that's my big beef with mainstream media, is that it's constantly talking to you like you're stupid. And a lot of people go into it. A lot of people get really stupid about it. Not saying everything on mainstream media is fake, but the stuff that's real, they probably only play it once, quickly on a news feed somewhere, and then it disappears and you can never find it again. And that's just to, put that thought in the back of someone's head who may have a brain. Anyway, talk to you guys later. Have a good one.